Good afternoon, members. It is appointed time and we have a quorum. Welcome to this afternoon's meeting of the panel on development. We have quite a number of items today, and the meeting will last 3 hours long. Item 1 of the agenda, information papers issued since last meeting. They have been set out on the agenda. Item 2, items for discussion at the next meeting. May I refer you to papers CB brackets 1, 1068, 2025-01, and 02. They have the list of outstanding items for discussion and the list of follow-up items. The next meeting will be held at 2:30 p.m. on Tuesday, 22nd of July this year. The following items have been proposed by the administration. 1. Water mains burst incidents in Tuen Mun District. And 2. Development proposal of Long Gu Tan reclamation and replanning of Tuen Mun West area. These are all topics that we concern, especially concerning bursting incidents of water mains in Tuen Mun District. Many members have written letters to express their concern. They propose to discuss this item as soon as possible. In response, the Development Bureau has proposed the item for discussion next time. I believe there is no objection. Mr. Tony Jie. Thank you, Chairman. I have no comments on the topics next time, but I think the Chairman would remember that I have made this complaint many times already. The papers are usually submitted very close to the deadline, just one day prior to the meeting. That would undermine our effectiveness in studying for the topic. Now, there are no government officials present, so I hope the Chairman would convey the message to the administration. I know there are quite a number of projects ongoing lately, but if we can get our hands on the papers as soon as possible, it would facilitate our discussion a lot. I share your concern. Recently, there are often late submissions of documents, so I would convey this message to the administration. Now, the last item today, Construction Industry Security of Payments Ordinance, CAP 652, Construction Industry Security of Payments Rules. The paper has been submitted very late. Now, these are only technical issues. However, the change has far-reaching impact, and there are many things to follow up on. So that's why I told the Secretariat to arrange the item to be discussed today. Now, after the rules have come into operation in August, it will be necessary to have the rules ready. So I think the administration shouldn't expect us to express no interest in the topic. That's why we have arranged for the Development Bureau to attend our meeting today to explain the construction industry security of payment rules to us. So I agree with Mr. Tony Jie. On several occasions, they were really too late. So item 3, facilitating the market and increase supply of students' hostels to consolidate Hong Kong's status as an international post-secondary education hub. We will now invite the administration to come in. 10 members have already raised their hands, or rather 11. Welcome, Secretary and her team. will first invite the Secretary to give us some opening remarks, and then her team will give us the PowerPoint presentation. Secretary, please. Let me read out the names of the members first. 11 of them: Mr. Ma Fong Kwok, Professor Chow Man Kwong, Ms. Chen Yut Ming, Mr. Michael Tien, Ambrose Lam, Tang Fei, Mrs. Regina Ip, Dr. Wendy Hong, Mr. Benson Look, Andrew Lam, and Tony Jie. Secretary. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. Today we are discussing with members how we can remove red tapes in terms of planning standards to facilitate more supply of student hostels, which are self-financed and privately funded, to establish the Study in Hong Kong brand. We have also invited members from the panel on education to participate in this item as well. First of all, the policy background of this policy. In the 2023 policy address, the Chief Executive has laid down a direction for high-quality development of our educational system. The idea is to build Hong Kong as a post-secondary education hub and a nurturing place of talents. The EDB has strived to step up promotion of the Study in Hong Kong brand to attract more non-local students to further education in Hong Kong. Now, with the lingering geopolitical tension, non-local students are expected to be further driven to explore opportunities of furthering their education in Hong Kong. That's why we must be ready and increase capacity to seize the opportunity to receive these non-local students. It is urgent to increase the supply of student hostels. In last year's policy address, the Chief Executive announced that the Development Bureau and the Education Bureau will, in the middle of this year, launch a pilot scheme in terms of planning regime, buildings regime, and also approval of plans. We will remove red tape to facilitate the market to convert existing hotels and commercial buildings into student hostels on a self-financed and privately funded model. We have heard from the market that there are interest in making use of commercial floor space to supply more hostel spaces. Now, over the past half a year, we have conducted a market sounding exercise concerning the needs of the academia and the markets, and we have come up with today's plan. If all goes smoothly, we will strive to launch the scheme in July, by which time we will also launch a dedicated website for the projects. The Development Project Facilitation Committee, our office, will also launch a one-stop facilitation service for student hostel projects. Ms. Ngao, thank you. Now, over the past few years, there are successful projects which have been converted into student hostels. However, that is dependent upon the individual factors of the relevant size of commercial buildings, which cannot similarly be applicable to other commercial buildings. Difficulties are mainly in planning and buildings regime. Under the existing planning regime, student hostel is categorized as residential institution, or RI. And in most commercial zones, they are not a column 1 use. Now, for commercial zones, RI is not a column 1 use. To convert the buildings into student hostels, a planning application must be submitted, or even conduct a rezoning process. Under the existing buildings regime, commercial buildings are regarded as non-domestic buildings, while student hostels are regarded as domestic buildings. Non-domestic buildings, compared with residential buildings, enjoyed a larger plot ratio and site coverage. To convert commercial buildings into student buildings, it will give rise to excessive GFA. And the floors cannot be demolished. In terms of land lease, unless the land lease explicitly prohibits residential use, otherwise it would not be an obstacle for conversion into student hostels. Now, after identifying the challenges, we would recommend to create a clear and easy-to-follow policy and regulatory framework with low compliance cost, while ensuring safeguards are in place to ensure the student hostels are in line with the objectives and are of quality. Now, under the planning regime, as I said, RI is not a column 1 use or always permitted use. We think that if each OZP is to be amended, that is too time-consuming. On the other hand, hotel use is usually a column 1 or column 2 use, that is maybe permitted use. And in nature, hotels and self-financing, publicly funded student hostels are the same. So we think we can extend the definition for hostel to eligible student hostels as well, besides guest house and hotels. Now, in the future, conversion of hotel into student hostels on commercial land would not require planning application. Now, at present, for residential zone, RI is an always permitted use, so hotels can be easily converted into hostels. Now, in terms of the building regime, there is the situation of excessive GFA. So in the calculation of plot ratio and site coverage, eligible student hostels would be regarded as non-domestic buildings. So we will no longer have to make any actual alterations in terms of the excessive GFA. There are the following 3 facilitation measures as well. First of all, prior to conversion, certain building facilities, for example, car parks, covered parkers, and loading bay, they enjoy GFA exemption. So after conversion, these exemptions can be retained. And also to meet, there are some facilities which are not useful for student hostels. Now we propose that these facilities can be converted into facilities which can benefit students, like gyms, study rooms, and laundry rooms. Eligible operators who want to convert their GFA into student hostels may flexibly use their GFA and remodify car parks or canteens into gyms, study rooms, and communal areas. Now, like other student hostels, we propose establishing some communal kitchen, canteen, and pantries for students. Now, quality is important, so we have to ensure that the converted student hostels are up to a certain quality. So the natural lighting and ventilation requirements, similar to those of hotels, will be put in place. Now, about land lease and land administration, we have selected 4 locations for research purposes. They are in Hong Kong, Jordan, Sai Ying Pun, and Shek Mun. There are universities nearby, and there are many residential B or C sites nearby. Now, under our proposed regime, only a small portion of these sites will require waiver or planning application for conversion into student hostels. So the land lease coverage is sufficiently large to cover student hostels already. There are also 2 other questions we have explored. That is, whether we need to provide waiver on premium and exemption, and also whether standard rates of fee should be established. Now, student hostels are, after all, for-profit operations, and this is a new scheme. So at this stage, we will not provide any waiver on premium or application letter, nor will we establish standard rates for the applications.
Now, just shared with members the 3 facilitation measures under the proposed regulatory regime. I will now go through the eligibility criteria and operation arrangement. There is no need to adopt an institution-based applications. In other words, applications may be submitted by post-secondary institutions, a private developer operator, or jointly by either of those. The applicant will be required to submit an application using a prescribed form, setting out basic information of the hostel, including location, size, zoning, number of places, mix of room type, size, source of tenants, supporting facilities, and also completion dates. The application result will be determined within 2 to 4 weeks. The applicant will also be required to sign a statutory declaration to give an undertaking that the requirements will be complied with. They will also be required to submit an annual certified audit report that provides occupancy statistics of the hostel and certifying that the eligibility criteria have been duly complied with during the reporting period. The operator will also be required to keep proper records on the fulfillment of eligibility, such as the tenant's background and the check-in, check-out dates. The statutory declaration provides that the relevant departments are authorized to gain access and exercise the power to inspect the hospital and check records. The Development Project Facilitation Office will also provide a one-stop service. Applications will be submitted via the office to the EDB for approval. Applicants can approach the office for progress of the application, etc. Now, as for eligibility criteria, only full-time local or non-local students of institutions, including exchange students, are eligible to stay in hostels. To allow flexibility, those who are affiliated with eligible institutions such as wardens and visiting scholars will also be allowed to stay in the hostels. However, the number of other tenants should not exceed 10% of the maximum capacity of the hostels in all times. In order to ensure a shorter time frame for the conversion works to be completed, we will require the developer or operator to complete relevant works within 18 months. Where justified, they may apply for an extension. We also welcome a wholesale conversion of the building into a student hostel. Subject to the compliance with certain conditions, we will allow partial conversion of the building, and I will further elaborate on this point later. The other 2 requirements are that the flats or beds cannot be sold off. The operator or developer must also take all reasonable steps to ensure that quality environment can be provided to students staying in the hostel. In the event of non-compliance, that means if the operator no longer meets the eligibility criteria, then enforcement action will be taken according to the statutory declaration and the relevant laws and regulations. For example, the Education Bureau may take legal action pursuant to the Crimes Ordinance against false statements made in the statutory declaration. Industrial buildings may not be sitting squarely within the industrial zone. We are of the view that the industrial zonings are generally less habitable than other sites. So to make sure that quality accommodation will be provided to students in the short to medium to long term, the industrial buildings will not be covered under the scheme. However, for industrial buildings that have gone through wholesale conversion located in non-industrial zonings, they will be eligible since they are no longer industrial buildings. So they will also be covered by this scheme. If there is a need to apply for a waiver again, under the revitalization of industrial buildings scheme, we will continue to provide a waiver. As I mentioned, we have a variety of building types in Hong Kong, and it is not possible to undergo wholesale conversion sometimes. Perhaps on the lower floors there may be a laundromat or delivery points, etc. We want to allow part of the building to be used as a student hostel, save for the following circumstances. For example, there should not be excessive multiple users coexisting in the building, and the student hostel portion should be of a certain scale and grouped together. They should not be scattered across different parts of the building, and no half-story conversion is permitted. For the student hostel portion, effective access control must be put in place. For example, facial recognition system or key cards should be used as part of the access system to ensure safety of students. As for our next step, subject to our discussion outcome today, we will accept applications formally in the middle of July. We will also set up a dedicated website for the scheme, which will set out the application documents and information, including the application form, the guidelines, and FAQs, etc., to facilitate interested developers or operators to join the scheme. The website also contains information that the students may find interesting, such as eligibility criteria. That concludes my presentation. After Mr. Tony Jia, a number of members would like to speak. Mr. Kenneth Lau, Mr. Perry Yu, Mr. Louis Long, and myself, 15 members altogether. We have a lot on our agenda today. We try to give enough time for each item, including this one, but let's observe the speaking time limit rigorously. I'll give each member 4 minutes, question and answer included. If your question hasn't been answered, please ask for a supplementary written reply after the meeting. So, in the interest of time, please keep your questions short. Government officials, likewise, please avoid giving lengthy answers. Mr. Marvin Kwok, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I'm fully on board with the idea that Hong Kong should be developed into an international post-secondary education hub. In fact, 20-odd years ago, I floated this idea to the government. Now, a student hostel is a major facility. We need to find a solution. In order to develop Hong Kong into an international talent hub of high caliber, the government has introduced a number of measures to meet this objective. So this scheme is a timely scheme. But there are market changes happening all the time. I want to know whether the Development Bureau has conducted any assessment as to how many developers or operators would be interested in the scheme. This is a business decision, but on the whole, I'd like to know whether the Education Bureau has any ways to assess the situation and lay down indicators. Now, if your indicators or targets are not met, is there a backup plan so as to increase the supply of student hostels? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. The first question relates to demand and supply, and by how much do we plan to increase the supply? This is a facilitation measure. We haven't laid down any target. We want to start with relaxing the rules, and then we'll gauge the market response. In fact, last week after this paper was published, the Development Bureau received a number of inquiries. These inquiries came from owners of commercial buildings. We didn't receive a lot of inquiries from hotel owners. Now, we had some projects involving conversion wholesale of a hotel into a student hostel in the past. But on this occasion, we have received quite some inquiries from owners who are in possession of commercial buildings or commercial sites. I think the member's question is whether we have confidence in the facilitation measure. The answer is in the affirmative. We're just taking the first step. We want to provide an incentive for conversion projects to take place because currently there are commercial buildings that have quite a high vacancy rate. So we want to promote conversion into student hostels. In the long run, in terms of facilitation measure for new student hostels to be built, we also have certain relaxation measures available. Right, my next question is whether the Education Bureau has any indicators or targets as to whether you're meeting the objective. I'll see if the Deputy Secretary for Education would take this question. Mr. Lee, we do not have any KPI as to the number of student hostel places. As explained by the Secretary, we have operators of student hostels who welcome this facilitation measure. In the long term, the university town in Northern Metropolis will be developed and sites will be reserved for student hostels to be built. Professor Chairman Kong. Hong Kong is a trendsetter in terms of developing ourselves into an international post-secondary education hub. And the two bureaus have joined hands in rolling out this policy. In 22-23, facilitation measures were rolled out, and that non-local students will continue to grow in Hong Kong. At the moment, the latest figure stands at 79,300, up by 90%. So for non-local students, we need 60,000 more student hostel places. Taking into account the increase in degree students increase by 40%, that means 72,000 or so. This facilitation measure is one that meets demand, is pragmatic, and it is important as our economy transforms towards high-end professional services. Now, for total number of student hostel places, the figure stands at 44,000 places. In 2018, we set up a student hostel development fund with a startup fund of $10.3 billion. Now, 15 student hostels are gradually reaching completion. What is the outstanding number? Because we want to achieve the equilibrium. We don't want any excess in supply or demand. The second question is for the Education Bureau. The second question is for Development Bureau. We have conversion of hotels into student hostels. I want to know the details. Is it that if you are a licensed hotel operator, you don't need to apply for another license to run a student hostel? According to the paper, the Education Bureau has a service pledge of 2 to 4 weeks. That's the time for responding to the application status. What about the enforcement aspect? My final point is this. Other tenants will be allowed to stay in hostel, up to 10% of the total hostel places. They are affiliated to persons such as wardens and visiting scholars. We understand that at the moment we have overseas scholars coming to Hong Kong, be it the 8 UGC-funded universities or the 12 self-financed institutions. They are all short of hostel places. Is it possible to provide greater flexibility and slightly adjust the 10% figure? Because education is not about the school campus. We need student hostels. Well, the secretary has less than 1 minute to respond.
Education Bureau. Out of 16 projects, 15 have out of 24 projects, 15 have been completed. Now the remaining 9 will be completed in 2028. There will be some 7,000 hostel places. So out of the 15,000 target, half of it has been completed. Secretary. Now for hotel licensees, if a licensee converts the hotel into a student hostel, will they be a beneficiary under the plan? So before that, if you put up your hotel as a student hostel, you will have to operate like a hotel. That is, you still have to provide car parking spaces and also loading and unloading bays. Now with the improved regime, you can make good use of the car parks and the loading and unloading bay to provide better supporting facilities for the students. In terms of our target approval time, usually we are responsible for approving the building plans. Under the improved regime, most applications do not have to go through the TANG Planning Board. Now for statutory building plans, our target is the statutory requirement is 60 days. Our target is to do better than that. When we have accumulated experience, we will issue an internal guideline for our departments. About the 10% affiliated personnel, for example, wardens and visiting scholars. That is the target, the initial target set by the Education Bureau. The main purpose is to accommodate students, so 10% should be the right figure. So I hope members can be more succinct in the questions. We have spent almost 6 minutes this time. Ms. Chen Yuming, Chairman, I support the proposals. I will take the perspective of the Northern Metropolis University Town. Now, the supporting facilities for the University Town. Now, this time around, we are more focused on the supply of hostels in the urban areas. Now, the blueprints for the University Town will be available in half a year's time. It is not very large, so we will need some supply from the private market in terms of students' hostels. Now, concerning the supply of private student hostels in New Territories North, now the town is 40 hectares large, but there is not a single hotel in the North District. I'm a member from the district, so I hope that we will have some more hotel facilities in the area. I hope that we will have student hostels and even hotels in the area. Second, concerning small houses and student hostels. Now, the paper focuses on encouraging hotels and commercial spaces to be converted into hostels. Now, in Taguling, there are some village houses which can be converted into student hostels. Now, there is a village in the area which is very scenic. We can offer some quality student hostels there. Now, private lodging for visitors and students would be very attractive in the area. Now, in terms of urban-rural integration, I hope the administration can consider the potential of villages. It can offer a unique experience to students and visiting scholars. The government can relax the planning application from small houses. Secretary. For existing commercial buildings or hotels in the North District, they can be benefited under the proposed measures. However, for NDAs like the Northern Metropolis University Town, we believe it will come with its own student hostels. And also, there are residential and commercial floor spaces in the same area. So we will consider whether we can offer some facilitation to encourage student hostels. Now, for small houses, at present, there are residential premises. If owners would like to lease their small houses for students, it is already allowed. Now, will we relax the rules so much so that small houses can be run as hostels for 1 or 2 days stay? Well, I think that that's different. Student hostels are different. Individual students can already rent a lodging with private small house owners already. On the other hand, we would not encourage operators to operate student hostels in a 3 or 2-story small house. Mr. Michael TIEN. Now, besides the government-funded and private secondary institutions, there are only 44,000 student hostels places. Now, altogether, we have some 170,000 students. So we are now focusing on the 80,000 non-local students who need hostel places. But that's the same for local students as well. For those students who live far away from their schools, it would be very challenging for them to go to schools. Even with 150,000 hostel places, that would not be sufficient. So I fully support your measure. But I'm worried about the perspective. As a tourism city, we are promoting tourism to overnight visitors and high-end visitors. But it seems that the government's policies are contradictory. We have a lot of commercial buildings, and the supply is going to ramp up, and there are not enough, and there is underwhelming occupancy rates in hotels. We have 90,000 rooms. The occupancy rate is 80%. The perception is very strange. You are trying to promote tourism, but you are allowing more hotels to be converted into student hostels, while hotels are already full. So can you first take hotels out of the equation? That would be more consistent in terms of optics. I know you would say that hotels are readily convertible premises. For commercial building, it takes more time. But I think the Secretary is very efficient in facilitating the change. Just give them some help. Can you consider my suggestion? Secretary, Chairman, post-secondary students and tourists are both groups we want to take care of. Our proposal covers hotels as well, because even without this pilot scheme, there are already some hotel operators who lease out their rooms as hostel places. But some spaces are wasted because, as a hotel, parking spaces and loading bay must be kept. So, in reality, these spaces are wasted. So we would like to allow interested hotel operators to make good use of those car park and loading bay areas. But we will let the market decide. The occupancy rate in the hotel industry is not extremely high. Last year, the occupancy rate was some 85%. Some new hotels are going to be completed soon. So we don't foresee that it would give rise to a shortage of hotel rooms. But we will keep monitoring the situation. All the inquiries we have received are from commercial building operators. So there are more commercial building operators who are interested in this scheme. Just very quickly, Chairman, I'm just talking about the perception. It would give the optics that different bureaus are working against each other. Now, if hotels think that there is profit to be made by converting, then they can do so. Now, for example, privately run student hostels already existed several decades ago near the Chinese University of Hong Kong. It is very normal for several students to rent a house together. Mr. Ambrose Lam, Chairman, I applaud the Development Bureau to respond to the market sentiment quickly and amend their policies. It highlights the government's determination to remove red tape. Now, there are three benefits. It can support the rental business of offices and promote our education brand and also lower the burden on the students. It is good for the people, the real estate market, and the economy. Now, but I'm worried whether we can achieve the intended effect. I have two questions. First, has the government conducted an estimation on the number of hotels or commercial buildings which will be converted into student hostels? Second, I've asked my friends who run hotels. They think their hotels are very suitable for conversion. However, the cost is prohibiting. And also, there is a trend of more visitors coming to Hong Kong. So renting out the rooms on a daily basis seems more profitable. That dampens their interest. The occupancy rate in the hotel industry is very high, although the hotel industry is still struggling. So would the government provide more facilitation measures to incentivize the hotel operators? Secretary, in terms of the estimated number of applications, we don't have an estimation yet. Now, for Grade B and Grade C offices, they may be interested. We don't think any Grade A office buildings would be interested. Now, the vacancy rates range from 11 to 16% for Grade B and Grade C office spaces. That is about 160,000 square meter of floor space. Like the member said, investment is needed. There is some upfront cost in terms of moderating the fitting. So we would like to give the market a free rein to decide. Any interested parties would be welcome. Now, no matter what the response is like, if there is a shortage of hostel places, we would consider more facilitation measures. For example, designating a site for the market to build student hostels.
Any follow-up? Well, this is exactly what I wanted to tell the Secretary. The market sentiment is just lukewarm. All right. Next, Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very good measure. Apart from relaxing rules, the government is demonstrating better coordination among policy bureaus. We always have this impression that when it comes to work across different bureaus, there are always problems. Now is a very good arrangement. And like the Secretary said, there is no need to gauge market demand because many non-local students come to Hong Kong and rent their own premises instead of applying for a student hostel. There are so many such students renting accommodation in the residential neighborhoods near Hong Kong U and Chinese University, etc. Now, my comment is this: will the government consider improving the title and the definition, because we have hostels for singletons, hostels for young people, for in some circumstances even for primary, secondary school students. We have student hostels for them as well, albeit the nature is entirely different. So, in fact, you should change how student hostels here is called, because there are three models. You allow operator developer to file an application, or they can join hands with the institution, etc. So the Education Bureau will have oversight over the running of student hostels to see whether students are eligible. For institutional-based student hostels, they may manage the hostels according to their own rules. For example, they may not allow eligible students to stay there. Whereas if it's a private developer operating a student hostel, there may be different rules applied. For example, you may have PhD students coming over to study, and they will bring along the dependents. So will their children and dependents be eligible to stay there? So how are you going to exercise oversight de facto? In fact, my suggestion is that perhaps you should change the name from student hostels to student apartment, and that a uniform regulatory unit should be set up to avoid misunderstanding. Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. I thank the member for helping us consider the title of this measure. Well, this will be rolled out in the middle of July, so there is still some time. We'll go back and mull it over. But let me first clarify the point. Whether or not an institution participates in the operation of a student hostel, in order to benefit from the facilitation measures we introduced today, that means the student hostels are considered part of the hotel. There is no need to apply for the town planning approval. And also, they can retain the excessive GFA and put them to good use. That means in order to benefit from the facilitation measure, they must follow the rules. Say when a developer proposes to convert wholesale that building into a student hostel, the developer will need to approach the Education Bureau, submit the proposal so as to retain the excessive or excess GFA for the use of the hostel. So approval is needed. In that sense, we do have a unified or regulatory regime. Now there is another extreme. A developer may instead take down the commercial building and build a student hostel afresh, so that they can take up to 50% of students and the dependents. Then they won't benefit from this facilitation measure. Mrs. Regina Ip. Well, we are short of student hostel places, and we do have a high vacancy rate for commercial buildings. So I support the Secretary's initiative to convert commercial buildings and hotels into student hostels. The problem is, earlier the government also rolled out a similar scheme for conversion of hotels into student hostels. So my question is whether it's fair to them, because it seems under the latest facilitation measure, they will enjoy more benefits. Because I recall back then the Legislative Council received complaints about the premium waiver. The second question is that according to the Lands Department, there is no need to pay land premium. Now, whilst I appreciate that, my question is whether you will charge administrative fees for the work process, like issuing visas by the Immigration Department, especially since the government is running on a tight budget. So it is only fair that administrative fees be charged. My third point is this. Student hostels are of utmost importance to promoting post-secondary education. Will you consider imposing a requirement for some student hostels? Only students could stay in, like a dormitory. We have self-financed institutions such as Zhuhai and the other one in Macau. Will you impose a requirement that only students could reside in the self-financed student hostels so that you don't have a mix of individuals in the hostel, so that the hostel will remain one for university students? Secretary. Chairman, let me respond to these questions about the conversion of hotels into student hostels. The licensee will not need to apply for approval again, because if it's a licensed hotel operation, it's really flexible. But there are benefits if the hotel is converted into a student hostel now. As mentioned, the building itself may be a hotel. It comes with pick-up drop-off point. It also has a car park. But then if it's converted into a student hostel, there is no need to abide by the licensing conditions as a hotel. That means the car park and the loading and loading bays can be optimally used for other purposes. The next question is about the premium waiver. The commercial buildings lease conditions are scoped very broadly for uses. Very often is for non-domestic use. Now, Secretary, I don't mind if you waive the charging of a premium. I'm suggesting that administrative fees be charged for processing the application, like the Immigration Department. Well, the point is there is no need to approach the Lands Department for land lease modification, since no modification is necessary. Now, if no modification is needed, there is no administrative fees to speak of. Otherwise, we not only charge administrative fees but also the land premium. We also have industrial buildings being converted wholesale for non-industrial uses. According to the prevailing policy, administrative fees are exempted. We are being very generous because old industrial buildings have fire safety hazards. And we want to be generous to encourage owners to proceed to wholesale conversion into a hotel. Now, as explained today, instead of converting the building into a hotel, they can choose to convert it into a student hostel, only that we will not grant any exemption of fees. Last question. Why don't we require the student hostel to serve a particular university. We want to keep things flexible so that the market can work out a way with the institutions. They may wish to find a partner with a particular institution. Otherwise, we don't mind if student hostels welcome students from different institutions. This is also one way of operating hostels as seen in other countries. It comes with merits as well. Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Chairman. Under this pilot scheme, hotels and commercial buildings will be allowed to undergo wholesale conversion into student hostels. This can help address the acute shortage of student hostels. I have 3 questions. A major difference between student hostels and normal accommodation is that it is a community for students. There is a common space for students to live together and facilitate exchange. Now, about the communal space, will the government consider designating a certain proportion apart from some basic facilities such as laundry rooms, study rooms, etc., and kitchen? Second question. There is a need to step up oversight over private student hostels. After all, we have very young students who are underage, perhaps 16 or 17 years of age. So how do we make sure that only eligible students stay in student hostels? The Secretary mentioned that they will not require the student hostels to take in only students from a single institution. This is to increase the opportunities for students to mingle. But how do you ensure safety? Third point, about local students. Some may have poorer background. Some may live quite far away from the institutions. According to data, successful applications from local students tend to be on the low side comparing to non-local students. So with increase in supply, will you consider raising the percentage for local students? Because we have grassroots families, and it is only right that we look after students, local students from the grassroots families. Well, I'll ask Mr. Poon to take the first question, and then the Education Bureau can take the second and third question. Thank you, Dr. Wendy Hong, for the questions. About the excessive GFA after wholesale conversion, we allow communal kitchens, pantry, study room, discussion rooms to be set up so that the GFA can be retained. The quality of student hostels should be on a par with ones available at the moment. We are not going to mandate the facilities, but if these facilities are provided, we believe that the student hostel will be attractive for parents and students alike.
Mr. Lee, the operators will have to operate the hostels according to our requirements. So, of course, the operators will have to ask for identification from the students to prove their identity. So the student hostels converted from hotels is up for application by local and non-local students alike. Now, for local students, they will usually be staying for 5 years. And also, we would consider the traveling time each student has in allocating the hostel places. Now, since there is an increased supply, can we enhance the ratio of hostel places allocated to local students. Each university has their own policy. Now, when the supply has increased, I believe that would change the decision as well. Mr. Benson Look. Thank you, Chairman. Now, this measure to incentivize the market to increase supply of student hostels, I think this is how a highly effective government working with a highly effective market to establish a study in Hong Kong brand. Now, I support this measure because this issue has been existing for quite some time. Now, my concern is there are several factors behind the success of our brand. First of all, we need to have top world ranking universities, and then we need to have a good supporting system for the students. Quality students' hostel is one of them. If we are to market our one-stop comprehensive package for international students, this is very important. To attract top-tier talents to Hong Kong, accommodation is vital. So can we encourage developers to establish a working relationship with our universities so that we can advertise this package to international students? Now, I know the operators are not required to be in touch with the universities, but should that be a requirement, that would facilitate monitoring of the hostels as well. Second, there is not a standard rate or any limit or restriction on the rental level concerning student hostels. Now, actually, many non-local students are living in private housing before they come to Hong Kong. So if the rent level is not that low compared with the private market, that wouldn't be very attractive. Secretary. Chairman, about the first question, whether we would match post-secondary institutions and potential operators. Many universities have conducted their own market research, and they are already in touch with many operators in private. So we have received some joint inquiry from interested parties, including universities. Of course, if some operators would like to get some help from the government to match themselves with the universities, we will be happy to help. In terms of rental level, since we are leaving that to the market's force, I don't think we should impose any restrictions. This is a demand-supply situation. When the supply is sufficient, then we hope that the rental level will not be too expensive. I think a hostel place is much more attractive than the students having to rent their own home in the private market. They can interact with other students in the same building, like in the pantry. This is very attractive. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam, Deputy Chairman. Thank you, Chair. Over the year past, whether it was local or non-local students, they had a large impact on the housing rental market in Hong Kong. At the same time, we have a very high vacancy rate for Grade C commercial buildings. So I think this policy is very timely. Now, in the light of that, since the government is not solely profit-seeking, I think we should be more flexible in this measure. Now, from an enforcement perspective, in most cases, the land lease needs not be modified. From a town planning point of view, if it is a column 1 use, if it is a hotel, then no application is needed. Now, if someone chooses to apply for an amendment with the town planning board anyway, because they don't want to subject themselves to more regulations, then will you adopt the same standard in processing that application? Will you adopt the same standard on considering whether a waiver should be granted? I think you need to send a clear message to the market. The principle of regulation should be the same for everyone. Now, I fully understand that you want to maintain flexibility. Now, in the past, we have the so-called service apartments, but for whatever reasons, they no longer exist. So will service apartments be even more flexible for students? Now, the paper says the targeted group is post-secondary students. Now, what about secondary school students or even primary students? There may be such demand in the future, so can we think further ahead? Secretary, on the last question, whether we would establish a study in Hong Kong brand for our secondary and primary school, I will leave that to the Education Bureau. Now, if the operators of hotels and commercial buildings would not like to convert their buildings into student hostels, then they should just keep it as a residential institution. If they apply a Section 16 application from the TPB, then at the buildings department's level, their building plan would also be approved on the basis of a residential institution, but not a non-residential premises. Now, in the past, we had a largely defined term called service apartments, but there were some issues. That's why we no longer use this term. It's either a residential institution or it is a hotel. We don't want hotel operators selling or leasing their premises. Mr. Asman Lee, now we are mainly targeting post-secondary students this time on whether we will extend the scheme to secondary and primary school students. Since it's involved a basket of factors and also involve cross-departmental policy making, we will keep monitoring the situation. I think this question is better left for the panel on education. Mr. Tong Li-jie. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I give my support to this proposal. This will allow more efficient use of resources. By suitably relaxing the restrictions, it will offer more flexibility. Now, despite there being different views among the members, I think this measure will be very popular On the contrary, I'm worried that there may be abuse because of the passion in the market. At present, the markets for commercial buildings is quite lukewarm, especially for mixed-use buildings. And many of those floor spaces are not used for retail, but rather warehouse purposes. So after conversion, it would generate much more rental income for the operators. So I think the government should lay down very concrete conditions. For example, no scattering of hostel places. Otherwise, there will be a lot of grievances. On the other hand, we are trawling for talents. We want to retain talents. Degree or even master degree or doctorate degree graduates, they may want to stay in Hong Kong, but because of lack of experience in the job markets, they would have difficulty finding a well-paid job, and they cannot afford a very expensive rent. So will the government consider extending the scheme to graduates so as to retain more talents in Hong Kong? After all, accommodation is their biggest hurdle. Secretary, concerning prevention of abuse, we do want to be cautious. So for partial conversion, we will be very careful. So we have laid down some guiding principles only. For example, we will not allow alternating floors of students' hostels. And also, we will not allow excessive multiple uses in the same building. But how do we define multiple uses? 3 uses or 4 uses? We haven't made up our mind yet because we want to see we want to look at the actual applications first before deciding whether more detailed guidelines are needed. And what about graduates? If they want to settle down in Hong Kong and find a job here, we will help them. Now, we aren't there yet. We are just targeting undergraduates. For graduates, they can resort to the private rental market, but we will see whether the scheme will be extended to them in the future. Mr. Kenneth Lau. Chairman, this measure is for implementing the policy address proposal to establish Hong Kong as an international education hub. So I support the government's move to relax the restrictions and lower the threshold for entering the market. It will encourage more supply of SFPF student hostel places and establish the Education in Hong Kong brand. Now, in this way, more non-local and local students can get allocated a hostel place. This is a win-win situation. Now, about the charge. Will the government set a cap or at least guideline on the level of rent charged by the operators? After all, the operators do not have to apply for land use changes, and also the land lease modification is not needed, and premium is not needed as well.
Secretary, Chairman, At this point, we will not devise guidelines on rental matters because there is market demand for student hostel places. There is a supply-demand imbalance. So I'd say that the student hostels provided by the post-secondary institutions do charge a generally higher rate. But with increase in supply, the market will be rebalanced. For non-local students coming in, they have certain means. For local students, they usually live with their families. So the best option is to let the market decide, instead of the government stepping in to so-called look after those in need. So we'll see how things go and see if we should impose restrictions. But basically at this point we try not to impose restrictions. Any follow-up? Perry Yu, Louis Long, myself, Dennis Leung, Bill Tang. After Mr. Perry Yu has spoken, I'll draw a line. These are the members waiting to speak. We need to observe strictly the time limit. I don't think I will give members the second round because after wrapping up this item, we need to move on to the next one. Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, Chair. Well, the Education Bureau and the Development Bureau has made a joint effort to relax rules so as to facilitate conversion of commercial buildings or hotels into student hostels. This will help develop Hong Kong into an international post-education hub and promote the study in Hong Kong brand. I support this initiative. The hotel industry generally welcomes the scheme as well. The industry would like to have more information about the details, so we look forward to having a dialogue with the government. Now, I'm concerned about a stable supply of hotel rooms. In order to promote tourism, we need a stable supply of hotels. The objective of this scheme is to convert idle commercial buildings into student hostels in order to meet demand. For hotels, the operators will need to have regard to the market and exercise their own judgment. Now, I want to emphasize the following. About conversion of hotels into student hostels, I think the common concern is that hotel license comes with very strict conditions. There are conditions on how the internal decoration should be done, including where the bed should be. So for hotel operators converting the hotels into student hostels, that means they will no longer be hotel licensees. Now, is there any revolving arrangement should they want to convert the building back to a hotel again? The second question is, I want to know whether the Education Bureau has conducted an in-depth assessment about the affordability of non-local students. As mentioned, we have student hostels offered in the private market, but there are also non-local students traveling across the boundary on a daily basis in order to further their studies here. So is there any assessment? This will help the overall planning on student hostel places. Let me take the first question. before we announced the scheme, some hotel operators applied for conversion of the hotel into a hostel, a student hostel. There is no need to apply for extra approval since they are licensed operators already. This scheme is about commercial buildings. There is no need to first convert the commercial building into a hotel before further converting the premises into a student hostel. Now the member asked about the revolving arrangement. A licensed hotel operator is still required to hold a license should he wish to convert the student hostel back to a hotel. The licensing conditions are, for example, loading and loading areas, parking spaces, etc. So there may not be an exemption if the building is converted back into a hotel. Now, about having a dialogue with the hotel industry, I understand that the industry would like to have more details, and we are working out a meeting date at the moment. I'll draw a line here. After Mr. Bill Tang has spoken, we will end this item. Mr. Louis Long, 4 minutes. My doctrine is to remove red tape and leverage on market forces. And on this premise, I have the following questions. The first is about the time frame. According to this paper, is a pilot scheme. So when will this scheme expire? What is your next step? When are you going to conduct a review? And with that, my next question is this. After converting a commercial building into a student hostel, would you require the operator to operate the student hostel for at least some time first? Because when we talk about market forces, it might be possible that operators convert student hostels back to other operations as well, depending on the market situation. My last question is this. Student hostels are regarded non-domestic buildings. Does it apply to a conversion scenario only? What if an owner wishes to build a new student hostel building? Will the owner be able to enjoy or benefit from the additional or the excessive plot ratio and site coverage? 3 questions. Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. It's called a pilot scheme because it's a new scheme. We haven't set a deadline. We want to gauge the market response. It's not a time-limited scheme. We don't want to rush things. We will keep in view the response and situation and make suitable adjustments as long as we give sufficient notice. And the next point is about the minimum time of operation of the student hostel after conversion. The answer is in the negative, but then if the operator wishes to cease operation, sufficient notice should be given to students, because after all they've taken in a cohort of students. So if my memory serves me right, there should be at least 1 year of notice period. The third point is that if you convert an existing commercial building into a student hostel, you can retain the excessive GFA. The member's question was whether the same relaxed approach applies to a new student hostel building, whether it is possible to enjoy a higher plot ratio if a new building is constructed. This is not ruled out, but we want to start with conversion first because it's more expeditious. We believe a student hostel will come on stream in just 1 year and a half or 2 years. However, what the members suggested is also a feasible option. We will be meeting the sector and we will be exploring this option in the next phase. Next is my turn. I strongly support the scheme. I studied engineering in Hong Kong University, and in the Western District, together with other students, we shared a flat. It's a mini dormitory, and we subletted the flat from the landlord. It came with a kitchen and a toilet. And what I mean to say is this. There's been a long-standing shortage of hostel places for post-secondary students. And as mentioned by other members, many students enjoy life in a student hostel. The shortage presents a long-standing problem. It is our objective to develop Hong Kong into an international post-education hub. So we need to address the issue of student hostels. We need to provide reassurance to parents living abroad. But there is one major problem. According to statistics in 2024, the population in Hong Kong totaled 7.53 million. By 2046, the population will go up to 8.19 million. I asked the same question at the meeting of the subcommittee. Now, the latest population projection has taken into account our talent attraction measures. About age distribution for the age bracket of 65 years or above, the percentage stands at 36%, and the labor participation rate will keep falling, and that is why we need to attract talents. Another major problem is that last year the median age of our population was 48. By 2046, according to the CNSD, the median age would reach 55.5, and that's on average half of our population will be nearing retirement age. We need to step up our efforts in attracting talents. And very likely these non-local students will remain in Hong Kong, so I fully support the scheme. It's really a very good facilitation measure for commercial buildings left idle to be converted into student hostels. Now, I have a question on management, and I haven't heard a concrete reply. Say for student dormitories, usually we have one floor for the ladies and the other for the gentlemen. So my question is whether guidelines will be formulated for the management of student hostels. I'll give the floor to Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. In formulating this plan, we have paid visits to privately operated student hostels. The operators are highly professional. They have considered the needs of the students and have used technologies to ensure that it is indeed students who are living in the hostel. Even the parents of the students are not allowed in without approval. So I think the operators are highly aware of the brand. The occupancy depends on the quality of management. I'm not very happy with the answer. if you manage the hostel poorly, maybe some students would enjoy it even more. I was asking whether there would be separate floors for male and female students. I don't think you know what you're answering. Just tell me if you are giving the markets a free rein. Thank you, Chairman. Now, we do not adopt a very stringent regulator's mindset to regulate the operation of the hostel. We think it would be better to leave the decision to the market. Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, Chairman. Yesterday, I was briefed about the plan by the Development Bureau and the Education Bureau. I support the plan. Some stakeholders in the education, in the academia, and the private market said that it is very costly to convert the building into students' hostels. So with the streamlining of the application process, I think it will really incentivize many to convert their buildings into students' hostels. However, to see the actual effect, we have to wait for at least a year for the conversion to take place. Now, I think most of the hostel places will be for non-local students. So I think the Development Projects Facilitation Office and the Education Bureau should pay attention to the rental level of the hostels. If the price is too high, it would make them less attractive. So I hope you can be more hands-on in regulating the rental level. Now, this is a new concept, so we don't know how the hostels will be managed. Will the universities be tasked to manage the building just like their own hostels? Like the chairman said, there would be better management, for example, separation between male and female students on different floors, and also entrance restrictions. But if there are students from many universities living in one building, that may give rise to more management issues. And I'm pleased to see that the government would avoid having too many users in the same building, combining hostels with commercial businesses and entertainment. Now, it's not very nice to revert to the situation in the past where there are a lot of mixed users in the same building. Secretary. Now, about the involvement of the Development Projects Facilitation Office, besides coordinating the approval process between departments, they will also be the contact point for the operators. But I must stress that the DPFO will not interfere in the rental level. Now, if the operators would like to know what's a reasonable price in students' mind, we will be willing to help, but we will not interfere with their decisions. Now, like I said, we will be particularly careful in terms of partial conversion because quality is important. The last member, Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Chairman. I agree with the general direction. We need to continuously internationalize our post-secondary education system. The premise is we need to offer sufficient accommodation. And also commercial floor space has an oversupply situation, as evidenced in my constituency, Kowloon East. Now, this doesn't involve the scrutiny of LegCo, but I appreciate the government respecting our views and consulting us. Now, I can foresee several situations. Some operators may pay no regard to what students they are, as long as they can pay the rent. On the other hand, they may be working together with education institutions to run the hostels. So will there be two separate systems of registration? Now, I declare interest. I'm a board member of the CUHK School Council. Now, there are actually some land developers collaborating with the HKUST to convert buildings into hostels. They are partners. So that's one way to deliver it. On the other hand, there are individual landlords who convert their buildings into hostels. So will there be different requirements for them? I know you will adopt a market-oriented approach, but will there be two separate markets and two sets of rules? I think that may be necessary. Thirdly, transparency. Now, there are some unscrupulous intermediaries who claim to offer one-stop services to mainland students, and then the quality of the accommodation they offer to the students is very poor. Secretary. Thank you. First of all, it is true that the facilitation scheme does not involve legislative process. Now, the only application needed is to have the TPB expand the definition of hotel to cover student hostels under the ordinance. For the remaining work is all administrative in nature. Now, whether the schools participate in the project or not, we adopt the same set of standards and rules. And there are those who have no need of our schemes. They are willing to let the excessive GFA remain, so they will not have to apply for our scheme. For those who enroll in our scheme, they need to sign a statutory declaration. And also, they will have to file their building plans as residential building with the building ordinance. If there is any contravention, we can enforce the law through prosecution of the offense, false statements, and so on. Now, we will promote the arrangements on our website. So if for any such projects to succeed, collaboration with universities and schools is necessary. So we will provide these. We will provide help to the operators. So from what I heard, I think the majority of members supported this scheme. There were some views on whether the project should be packed with universities and whether mandatory collaboration with universities is needed. Now, whether mandatory or not, if the hostels tout the name of a certain university, then it would be much more attractive to students. It would be very good marketing to students. So that would be a win-win scenario for me. So I understand from the Secretary that the government will be the matchmaker for operators and educational bodies. So in the long run, we need to have more young people settling in Hong Kong. I hope that this project will help. In year 2046, the median age will be 55.5. That's worrying. So I have to refer to the CNSD's reports for the accurate figure. Thank you. That's all for this item. The next one. Next item. Development of 3D digital map. We will now invite the administration to come in. You may now press the button.
Now
the members are Mr. Andrew Lam, Dr. Wendy Hung, Mr. Tony Jay, and Mr. Bill Tang. We welcome the government officials attending this item. We will now invite them to walk us through the item briefly. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members. Now we are reporting to the panel on developments. The developments of the three-dimensional digital map by the Lands Department and also the implementation and application of the 3D digital map. Back in 2017, we have announced the development blueprint for smart city in Hong Kong. Now it says we will establish a common spatial data infrastructure, CSDI, and also a 3D digital map for promoting developments of smart city. Since 2020, the Lands Department has been actively studying the development of a high-quality three-dimensional digital map covering the whole territory. We have completed the map gradually, and since March this year, the map already covers the entire territory. And in 2023, we have launched an open 3D HK platform to facilitate wider public use of the 3D digital map. So what's a 3D digital map? As the following slides will show, there are three major components. First, a 3D visualization map. It covers the whole territory of Hong Kong, and it provides a highly photorealistic 3D city model. It covers more than 220,000 buildings and infrastructure facilities in Hong Kong, as well as categories such as vegetation, site, water body, terrain, and others. The buildings are presented as tile-based models and mesh models. Now the second one is the 3D pedestrian network. It has a total length of more than 9,100 kilometers. It covers all public pedestrian roads, including footways, footbridges, subways, unpaid areas of all MTR stations, and also hiking trails in country parks. The idea is to help users identify the fastest and most direct routes and support innovative users as well. It also covers the accessibility information to all government venues and also public lifts.
The last one is a pilot. On a trial basis, the 3D indoor map covers 1,250 buildings in Hong Kong. I'll now give the floor to Mr. Zhu, Deputy Director of Lands and Survey and Mapping, to give you more details on the application. The Director just went through the 3 maps, and they can be downloaded through this portal. In 2021, we rolled out the portal. The CSDI supports the development of smart government and smart city. In order to raise the public's awareness about the merit of the 3D digital map, we launched in September 2023 the Open 3D HK. You can see that on the right hand side there are interactive functions. We have highly photorealistic maps, and we also allow the measurement of routes and distances, gradient of slopes, etc., for the planning of hiking and cycling trails. As at the end of December 2022, we recorded over 220 million downloads and hit rates for the API and the maps. I'm going to play a clip for you to see how it works. Hong Kong is a highly dynamic city. The 3D visualization map allows people to explore the different corners of Hong Kong and our pace of development. This is impossible using a 2D map. For the 3D visualization digital map, we can accurately provide information about the modeling of individual buildings, and also allow users to make use of the data for other applications, such as the height of buildings and the completion dates, so that government departments and the academia can further develop applications to make use of or display the data and provide greater convenience for the public. The 3D digital map covers land administration, city management, and public services economic development. Apart from aerial photos, we also make use of another system on road, and we collected over 5,000 kilometers of street data, and that's the distance between Hong Kong and Beijing. And we also collect data from the point cloud data. Now, I'd like to give you more details about these examples of 3D visualization work to support Kutong Fanling NDA works. We provided the Lands Department with cloud point data from Tuen Mun to Fanling, 34 kilometers, and we also work with the Hong Kong U Research team, and we supported the Transport Department and the police as well. You can scan the QR code to access the full footage. The other example is Housing Authority. The Hong Kong Housing Authority developed the Project Information Management and Analytics platform to cope with mega projects. As you can see, it covers new public housing development projects. Through this platform, we can have access to project data, the progress of housing supply, and through BIM and GIS, the Housing Authority will have a better idea about the overall planning, and data can also be consolidated for project selection. The 3D digital map provides a basis on which the digital twin technology with the 3D digital map can be used as infrastructure to enhance the management efficiency of projects. The next example is the Lands Department. In September 2023, the Lands Department helped other departments such as fire services, etc. We simulated the black spots of flooding on the map of Hong Kong according to the data provided by the Hong Kong Observatory. Within 5 hours, the Fire Services Department and other departments were able to dispatch aids. It was very effective. Other government departments have also made use of our 3D digital map. For example, the Urban Renewal Authority has this system. It shows different land uses, planning requirements, development density, infrastructure, building status, etc. The data are shown on the 3D digital map so that the URA is able to collect and analyze data so as to chart the way forward on urban renewal. The URA also displays the relevant spatial data at the sale locations for the public to have a better grasp of the properties concerned. Another example, the MTRCL commissioned the Tuen Mun South Extension projects in 2023. The consultant also made use of 3D digital map for spatial analysis. For example, for the Tuen Mun South Extension Line EIA report, the consultant leveraged on 3D digital map data to help them analyze different matters such as air ventilation, noise, visual impact, so on and so forth. Another example involves an NGO such as a Hong Kong UST. They've made use of the 3D digital map to develop a rehabilitation device. For those with mobility issues, they can make use of the data to help them go back to their residence. That's for those with memory decline. We also help another NGO in using the 3D digital map. Now, about the 3D pedestrian network, as explained by the director, the 3D pedestrian network covers public pedestrian roads, including the MTR stations, hospitals, etc. Now, the members of the public may access the data via a number of apps, such as Lands Department, the Hong Kong Mobility, and Energizing Kowloon East, or My Kowloon East. For the purpose of navigation, users can use the 3D pedestrian network data. There is also information about barrier-free access, such as the operating hours of the lifts, etc., and sheltered walkway for the purpose of barrier-free route planning for people with commuting needs. In 2023, the government launched the Community Living Room Program. The District Office of Sham Shui Po and our office made use of the 3D pedestrian network data to formulate a 15-minute living circle There is also consolidation of data between CSDI and CNSD so as to assess the location of community living rooms in order to decide their best locations. Next, about the 3D indoor map. As you see, this example on the left-hand side, in 2023, an emergency drill involving different departments made use of the 3D indoor map. It showed the layout of the buildings and the drill locations for the purpose of spatial analysis. Now on the right hand side, as you can see, it shows the number of floors, units, access and egress, windows, etc. So comparing to traditional 2D maps, the 3D indoor maps offer greater convenience. The 3D indoor map is also one important support for low altitude economic activities. We understand that in promoting low altitude economic development, the 3D digital map is used as a digital infrastructure so as to coordinate the relevant activities across different government departments. The Lands Department also provides support for LAE activities by providing spatial data, real-time dynamic positioning, as also pre-flight analysis and planning. The Lands Department helps build the infrastructure for promoting LAE activities. Now, this example shows the use of a drone from Tuen Mun Road to a remote village. By making use of the 3D digital map and the data, we can calculate flight path and identify relevant obstacles so as to issue alerts. For restricted zones and other matters worthy of our attention, we can show them in a 3D manner, such as the helipads and also the flight path of the drones. The department has also applied for one of the projects under the regulatory sandbox projects, and that is for the collection of point cloud data using small unmanned aircrafts under the beyond visual line of sight operation. This can further enhance the efficiency and the frequency of updates of the 3D map. I'll give the floor back to the director. Now, next step is to update the 3D digital map upon its full launch. As far as our strategy is concerned, we update this 3D map once every 2 years. However, within the 2-year period in the interval, we provide an update when mega infrastructure has been commissioned, such as Kai-Tak Sports Park, as well as the extension of the electrical complex. We proactively updated the map without waiting for the regular update. Apart from updating the map, we will continue to closely monitor the development of the industry. We'll also mount publicity. Now, according to our work on the 3D digital map, it forms a very important foundation to promoting digital economy and the smart city development in Hong Kong. So we'll continue to keep in view the latest development. We'll also proactively work with the Development Bureau and other partners such as Cyberport, Science Park, and the I&T communities, so as to drive the innovative applications of 3D spatial data and technology in a continuous manner. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the video clips. So before the floor is open, I have a simple question. This is just a report of the development and usage of the 3D digital map. So the paper doesn't say whether more funding or resources will be needed. Thank you, Chairman. We are deploying our existing resources within the Lands Department to develop the 3D digital map. If there are innovative uses which require upgrading of the system, we may apply for more funding through the established channels. But so far, we don't have this plan yet. Thank you. 6 members: Mr. Andrew Lam, Dr. Wendy Hong, Mr. Tony Jie, Bill Tang, Mrs. Regina Ip, and Mr. Louis Leung. Mr. Andrew Lam, Deputy Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the usage and development of the common spatial data infrastructure, we have seen significant improvements over the last few years. I myself have been using the technology together with other non-profit organizations. So the government has done a good job. But like the Deputy Director said, updating is very important. So with the limited resources the government has, how can we do our best? Now, low altitude economy. Now, the 3D visualization map has covered the entirety of the territory. That's great. Now, I think that's okay as a starting point. But when it comes to low altitude economy, we need to observe the exterior or the actual facade or the exterior of the building. We need to conduct a survey of the buildings. And this may not be sufficient. There are often unauthorized building structures and also the attachments, for example, air conditioners and other fixtures. So we may need to resort to more advanced technology to do that. I know AI can help formulate a pretty accurate picture. Now, about the 3D indoor map and the 3D pedestrian network, they are very helpful. But I think there is a bottleneck. It is only limited to public spaces. Now, in Hong Kong, many pedestrian roads go through shopping malls, which are private premises. Now, I always work with persons with disabilities, so I think we need to have information of the indoor situation of shopping malls as well. So how can you encourage more participation by private developers so that they can make available their indoor data to you? And also from the point of accessibility, it's not just pedestrian roads. What about bus stations and other roads? I hope that in the next update, these will be covered as well. So when will you include these information in the system as well? Deputy Director. Thank you. Concerning the way forward for the 3D digital map, this is a foundation for different departments or even the general public and the private market to explore innovative uses so as to promote overall smart city development. Say, for example, we have already compiled a 3D model for our buildings and our topography. But is it possible that departments can launch innovative mobile apps based on that? Now, the Highways Department has already adopted AI on the premises of this platform in road maintenance. It enables the application of new technologies to repair roads more efficiently. Other departments are also encouraged to be innovative in using the data. Now, the Lands Department does its best to create a 3D digital map for, as a platform for different departments to go creative. Now, about the 3D indoor map and the pedestrian network. Now, the indoor map is a pilot use. It covers 1,250 buildings. Now, we'd like to encourage new ideas by using the 3D indoor maps to enhance management of the buildings. So we selected those buildings on that premise. For example, besides public venues, we have also covered all the unpaid areas in MTR stations. We have included those information on the map as well. So as Mr. Lam said, we are doing more than facilitating point-to-point travel at grade. The accessibility information underground in MTR station is also displayed in the pedestrian network. Now, whether information of private premises can also be made available, we do keep an open mind. Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Chairman. 2 weeks ago, the Lands Department applied for a funding to upgrade the seismic or topographic information system. That's the 3rd generation land information system. Now, it will be commissioned in a few years' time. So will the 3D digital map be compatible with the 3rd generation land information system? I was told by stakeholders in the sector that our GIS is lagging behind our neighbors like Singapore. Now, we are talking about 3D. However, the Singaporean model has gone beyond that. They have entered the AI phase. With AI's assistance, the model can display the present and future prices of buildings in a 100-meter diameter. And also, we can charge the private users a fee by using the model to make up for the cost. And will the government enhance the system with AI? Deputy Director, thank you. Dr. Wendy Hong is correct. Now, 2 weeks ago, the Finance Committee approved a funding for upgrading the land information system. Now, we explained clearly why this upgrade is justified. That is to commensurate with the developments of the 3D digital map. Now, several years ago, we started building this map. Now, the information is stored in a standalone system. Now, the thing is, the 2D and 3D digital maps are segregated. So with the funding approved, in a few years' time, we're going to launch the upgrade to the 3rd generation of the system. One of the objectives is to convert all the 2D parts to the 3D. All the information will be stored on the same platform. That would overcome the segregation of information we have for 2D and 3D information at present. Now, in the new system, we'll be using new processes which will enable AI technologies. It will be used for analyzing geospatial data. Now, besides analytical uses, AI will also be of great help in terms of updating the 3D digital map. Now, we are also making reference to the latest developments in the technology to ensure that the upgrading work is simple and efficient. Now, about how our system compared with other neighbors. Now, I can say confidently that the infrastructure, this infrastructure of 3D digital map is one of the best in the entire common law jurisdiction. Now, it's just about integration of data across the platforms. Now, the Spatial Data Office has done a lot of work over the past few years. But the success depends a lot on the willingness of the private sector to open up their data for use. Mr. Tony Jie. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I agree that the 3D digital map is a key component in promoting the development of smart city. As mentioned by the Deputy Director, there are lots of benefits. So I hope the government would continue to upgrade the system and make available more information. I have several suggestions, though. As mentioned in paragraph 10, the upgrade cycle is every 2 years. So I think the cycle should be shortened. Chairman, technologies are developing so rapidly, and we are aggressively developing the land. So in a very short span of time, the information would be outdated. So I think we should deploy SUAs to speed up the surveying and upgrading process, especially in NDAs. And I think we can designate a shorter upgrading cycle for data in relation to some areas like the new development areas. Because if the data is outdated, they would be useless. Now, you mentioned the trial 3D indoor map. So besides government buildings and also private buildings which have joined on a voluntary basis, is it compatible with BIM, Building Information Model? Now, there may be some legal issues to sort out, for example, intellectual property and privacy concerns. So, in the future, will the BIM be connected with the 3D digital map? And also, as I have mentioned before, during the funding application, data will be immensely useful in the future. For example, analyzing traffic flow, mini-climates, micro and macro climate patterns, and so on. It's very useful for formulating policy. If the government has all the data in place, then we can save a lot of money on compilation of reports. The raw data itself will be sufficient. So this will be really useful in speeding up the approval process. Thank you.
Director, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for the comments. As I mentioned just now, the frequency of update. As the paper suggests, we strive to update the map every 2 years. But as pointed out just now, whenever new developments are completed, we will update the map more frequently than the interval of 2 years. We act rather proactively. Is it possible to further shorten the interval from 2 years? Now, the member made a very good point, such as using unmanned aircrafts to help collect data for the updating of the map. Indeed, this can boost the efficiency of our updating efforts, and then we can shorten the time. On the 3D indoor map, again, the member made a very good observation. The indoor map covers on a trial basis 1,250 buildings. Is it possible for the government to expand the indoor map to cover over 200,000 buildings in Hong Kong? I'd say it's not likely to happen. Rather, we'd like to leverage on market forces, especially BIM. BIM is being adopted by public works projects, but it is not the prevailing approach for private buildings. In 2013, the Development Bureau published a roadmap for the adoption of BIM and for plan submissions. This way, we hope to encourage the private market to adopt BIM as well in the future. And then there will be an opportunity for the integration of BIM data with the Common Spatial Data Infrastructure. Once this is completed, it may become possible that the relevant BIM data may be converted for the use of the 3D indoor map, so as to further expand and enrich the database for private buildings, and this can help improve the 3D digital map in general. The last point is about general data. I'll give the floor to my colleague. In fact, as I mentioned in my presentation, some consultants have made use of the 3D digital map in order to show, for example, the effect of noise mitigation measures. There can be a before and after comparison. Now, are the data available for submission for the purpose of building plan approval? Well, I believe this is something that we can work towards when BIM technology becomes more widely adopted. Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Chair. The 3D digital map receives regular updates. It also allows public to access for free. My question is this. The 3D digital map is available online for use by the public. My question is whether the data are also admissible in court as evidence. Because once you have the 3D spatial data, we will have the full view of a building. So that means there is now an easier solution to tackle unauthorized building works. Another department may prepare the building model, and if the surveying result exceeds the boundaries indicated, then we should raise eyebrows. So my question is whether the digital map in the public domain can be admitted in court as evidence, at least for the department's use. The other question is this. Another department will wishes to take enforcement action against, for example, unauthorized building works. Another department may wish to conduct monitoring about possible landslip risks or the maintenance of risks of slopes. Is it possible that these departments could make use of the 3D digital map for law enforcement and for other purposes? Director. Thank you, Chairman. The Lands Department makes available to the public maps and photos. Basically, they are admissible in court as evidence. The member asked about individual cases of unauthorized building works. That depends on the circumstances. We've made use of aerial photos before. That means the photos taken from above, using drones or otherwise, for prosecution purposes. However, are the data so precise as to allow the respective government departments to take precise law enforcement actions? I can't say for sure, because for unauthorized building works or illegal structures in multi-story buildings, we may not have accurate data for law enforcement. The 3D digital map, however, forms a solid foundation, and we welcome other government departments' development of information systems on the basis of the 3D digital map to help them enforce the law. As far as the Lands Department is concerned, the 3D digital map is accurate. It is precise, but it may not be as precise as to help the specific law enforcement actions undertaken by specific departments. Mrs. Regina Ip. I thank the Lands Department for walking us through the 3D digital map. It's for public good and it's in the public domain. Just by accessing the portal, you'll be able to access data. I want to know whether your department has developed the technology through internal resources, or did you engage a consultant? Was any other department involved? Thank you for the questions. The 3D digital map is built on the prevailing technology available around the world. Basically, we rely on, say, aerial photography. Hong Kong is a highly three-dimensional built-up city. So we have vehicles capturing street images. We also provide these images to the 3D digital map system. And for especially crowded areas, we also have other backpacking surveying tools. This is in line with the global trend. I just want to confirm that this technology exists around the world. We have over 1,000 buildings, and comparing to Shenzhen and Guangzhou, how would you comment on Hong Kong situation? About 3D indoor map, I'd say that Hong Kong is in the leading position. We are on a par with, say, Japan and other neighboring cities in the mainland. and we adopt international standards. The data format is in an open format, which can facilitate further development. Any follow-up? No. Mr. Louis Law. Thank you, Chairman. According to the Director, our 3D digital map fares as well as that in other neighboring cities. So I'm happy to hear that. As I understand, the focus is on a 3D indoor map. It covers on a trial basis 1,250 buildings, including government and private buildings. Well, I don't think there is any problem with collecting data for government buildings. What about private buildings? How many among the 1,250 buildings are private? In your annex, in March 2025, the remaining sets of the 3D indoor map will be released. Do they cover private buildings? Because my question is this. I want to know the extent of precision of the 3D indoor map. Are private building owners willing to pass on precise data in the interior of buildings to you? Whilst the map offers convenience, owners are concerned about building security. So these are my two questions. Deputy Director. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member, for the questions. Yes, the 3D indoor map covers 1,250 buildings. So far, the data about 600 buildings or so have been released. They mostly relate to common areas. For the remaining data sets to be released, we need to contact the property management companies and owners. First, we need to explain to them what the 3D indoor map is about. In fact, we ran a number of seminars for owners and property management companies. We sought their consent for the release of data, and that's how we worked with the MTRCL. There are some parts of the properties not suitable to be released in the public domain, and they will be obliterated. And that's how we operate. Right, a follow-up question, Chairman. When you contact the owners and the property management companies, what were their biggest concerns? For those who were not willing to take part in your efforts or release data to the 3D indoor map, how would you allay their concerns? Well, for those who refuse to make available the data, it's mainly because of the lack of understanding of the 3D indoor map as well as the privacy concerns. The member just now mentioned to what extent the 3D indoor map would show. Well, basically, it shows partition information. There is no privacy concern.
That concludes this item. Thank you for your attendance. Now let's move on to the next item. Item 5, Construction Industry Security of Payment Ordinance, Chapter 652. Construction Industry Security of Payments Rules. The papers are set out on the agenda. Again, please invite the government officials for this item to come in. If you have any questions, please press the button now.
好，咁啊，而家請
Government official, please walk us through the paper. Mr. Johnny Chan. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, we thank the Chairman for giving us this opportunity to brief members on the construction industry security of payments rules. That's the proposed subsidiary legislation for the gazetted construction industry security of payments ordinance. Now, the Chairman and the members here were also the members of the Bills Committee. So I thank the members for scrutinizing the bill and passing the bill. The construction industry has high hope for the ordinance. Now, the rules we are discussing today will become a subsidiary legislation under the ordinance. The purpose is to provide for the practice and procedures relating to the applications to the court for setting aside and enforcement of adjudication determination. Now, I will defer to my colleague, Mr. Alan Tang, to present a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Deputy Secretary. Now, with the concerted efforts of the Legislative Council and the construction industry, on the 27th of December last year, the Construction Industry Security of Payments Ordinance was passed and gazetted. Now, under Section 12, the Secretary for Development was conferred the power to establish a register of adjudicator nominating bodies and oversee their performance. It has already taken effect on the gazettal date. Now, for the remaining provisions, they will come into operation 8 months after the gazettal, that is on the 28th of August this year. Construction contracts entered into on or after the date will be covered by the ordinance. Now, concerning the subsidiary legislation of the ordinance, first of all, when there is a dispute on payment, within 28 days, the paying party can file for an adjudication within 28 days. Now, an independent adjudicator will determine the relevant fees. Now, within 55 days upon the appointment of the adjudicator, a determination must be made. Now, to protect both the paying party and the claimant, whenever there are specific or limited circumstances, under Section 48 of the ordinance, the aggrieved party may apply to the courts to set aside the relevant determination. Now, these limited circumstances only refer to determination that was improperly procured through fraud or bribery, or when there has been a material denial of natural justice in the proceedings, or when the adjudicator has not acted independently or impartially in the proceedings, or that the adjudicator has acted in excess of the adjudicator's jurisdiction in the proceedings. Now, normally speaking, the determination would not be set aside simply because of a doubt cast on the expertise of the adjudicator. Now, according to Section 49 of the ordinance, a party may apply to the court for enforcement of the determination. Now, the courts of first instance and the district courts both have the jurisdiction on set-aside application or enforcement application. Now, to give effect to Sections 48 and 49 of the ordinance, it is necessary to provide a procedural framework for the related court applications. Now, concerning the proposed rules, there are the following key features. First, the court to which the application is made. Now, a set-aside application or an enforcement application may only be made to the CFI if the adjudicated amount exceeds $3 million, or for an amount lower than $3 million only to the district councils. And also the rules will set aside the relevant forms in the application. An application must be made by originating summons in Form number 10 or Form number 11 respectively, both available in Appendix A to Cap 336H or Cap 4A. Now on set-aside application, for the paying party, for a set-aside application filed by the paying party, the applicant must pay into the court the security required under Section 48(5) of the Ordinance within 14 days. Now on transfer of proceedings. Depending on the jurisdictional amounts and or the importance of or complexity of the case can be transferred between the DC and the CFI. Leave for appeal. It means a decision to grant or refuse a set-aside application or enforcement application, and also the application for leave to appeal against the decision. According to the rules, the application may only be made to the court that makes the decision within 14 days after the date of the decision. Now, in March 2025, the government has invited the legal profession, including the Law Society of Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Bar Association, and the Society of Construction Law Hong Kong, to give views on the draft rules. The Task Force on the Construction Industry Security of Payments Ordinance has also provided comments on the draft rules in early June. The legal profession and the Task Force generally support the establishment of a clear and efficient procedural framework to facilitate the implementation of Sections 48 and 9 of the Ordinance. The government has also incorporated the views from the judiciary during the drafting process. Now, we want to proceed with the legislative timetable as soon as possible. Publication in the Gazette tabling to the electrical for negative vetting and the commencement of the rules. We want to complete all these in the third quarter this year. Now, finally, before the implementation of the rules on the 28th of August, we have completed some preparatory works. For example, between January and April this year, we have held briefing sessions for main contractors and other stakeholders, covering the various aspects of the ordinance. And with the support of the Construction Industry Council, in May, we have launched an information website concerning the scope of the ordinance and also the procedural matters in court. We have also uploaded some info package as well as FAQ and other hyperlinks to the website. The 50 FAQs covered the question asked during the scrutinizing of the bill and also during the consultative process. Third, on the register of adjudicator nominating bodies. Starting from the 20th of June, we have started accepting nominations. Quite a number of nominations have been received. We are now vetting the nominations. Lastly, updating the standard contracts documents. Now, back in the end of 2021, we have launched a pilot scheme. That is pilot scheme on security of payment concerning public works. Now the technical report has been completed this year. We will provide for a transitional period for the industry to adapt to the new provisions. And some local professional associations are now compiling the templates for the industry's reference. Thank you. Now, Mr. Louis Leung and myself have pressed the button. Mr. Louis Leung, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, as a representative of the trade, I'm pleased to see that the Construction Industry Security of Payments Ordinance was passed after so many years of discussion. So I give my wholehearted support to the bill and the ordinance. In terms of delay of payments in the industry, the ordinance may not be the panacea for it, but it will definitely be of help. So we hope that there will be fewer and fewer occasions where workers do not receive their hard-earned money. So I don't have a lot of questions concerning the framework of the rules. They are very general provisions. Now my question is about the adjudicators. When the rules are implemented or take effect in August, will there be sufficient adjudicators to handle cases? Second, in your introduction, you mentioned that the briefings were held between January and April. So what feedback have you received during the briefing sessions? Are there any questions from the candidates of adjudicators? Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Leung. Now, adjudicators, they will be nominated by the nominating bodies, and we have begun the application process. We have received a dozen of applications. More is to come. Now they include the expertise of the adjudicators, so initially speaking, we think that by August, when the rules are implemented, there will be sufficient adjudicators available. As the next step, some of these adjudicator nominating bodies are already rolling out training programs for adjudicators. Now, there are several mandatory modules which adjudicators must be trained on. So we will review the adjudicator nominating bodies training program and ensure that they are up to standard. Now, concerning the briefing sessions held, they were attended by contractors, main contractors, professionals, and also frontline workers from the industry. So generally speaking, the feedback was that the stakeholders would like to know more clearly about the applicability of the rules and also the entire court process. We will compile a set of frequently asked questions for the public's benefit. Now may I defer to my colleague, Mr. Alan Tang, who has participated in the briefing sessions himself.
梁生，
Mr. Tang, please. Thank you, Mr. Long. Thank you, Chairman. We shared our insight with over 3,000 participants. These participants were contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, consultants. They put a lot of questions to us, covering a number of areas. Now, as for our next step, we are inviting applications for adjudicator nominating bodies, and questions were put about the independence of adjudicators or their qualifications. And as mentioned by the Deputy Secretary, we have already uploaded the relevant information onto the website. There are also 4 so-called education documents, including the adjudication rules, codes of practice, code of conduct, and guidelines on conflicts of interest. Some questions were put about in relation to these documents. In fact, these documents are also uploaded onto our website, such as the guidelines on the prevention of conflict of interest. Details can be found on the website. Right, my turn now. About the rules you've just walked us through, my understanding is that for pending adjudication determinations, if need be, the matter can be taken to the district court or the court of first instance. So it's something really procedural. I don't have strong views on the matter like Mr. Lu. We're talking about standard court procedures. However, in terms of the timetable, you propose to submit the rules to the third quarter, to the LegCo in the third quarter. I think you need to be careful because the LegCo will go into prorogation in August, and then early September it will be resumed after the break, and this will be the last council meeting. That's the 22nd of October. So if it's done by negative vetting, a subcommittee will have to be set up upon approval by the House Committee, and that means we have a very tight time frame. You need to submit the subsidiary legislation in by July. Is that right, Mr. Chan? Now we are working out the schedule with the Secretariat. As the Chairman mentioned just now, we target the submission in July. We are finalizing the rules. The Chief Judge of the High Court will need to sign the Blue Bill first. We'll go through internal vetting again, and the LegCo brief should be submitted in July. Now, since this will be done by way of negative vetting, we will publish the rules in the Gazette first before submitting the rules to LegCo for negative vetting. So, like the Chairman said, if everything remains on the right track, after going through the steps within September, that's in the third quarter of this year, we should be able to complete these steps, and that's the date as published in the Gazette in September. Right, apart from the rules that you walked us through, there are provisions that took effect last year upon passage of the bill, such as the adjudicator nominating body as well as the register. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to exchange views with you today. Meanwhile, I know that you've made progress. The remaining provisions will come into operation on the 28th of August. That means for new contracts, no delayed payment will happen. So I thank you for briefing us on your progress. Any other questions? If not, that wraps up the item. Thank you. I thank the government officials for attending today's meeting. Next AOB, nothing under AOB. So the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.